Hey, it's Chris. Gomo Gomo board games? Yeah, we're doing board game crowdfunding roundup. What's gone on this past week? What's new? What's out there? Why should you be interested in it? Why shouldn't you be interested in it? Let's run it down because we have some big names, some big funds, and some updates here at the end already talking about some other ones from the past week or two. Lots of names, lots of cash. Let's roll around with it. Let's go. Yeah, we're starting with Gloomhaven, the Gloomhavens, the Gloomhaven Grand Festival is what they're calling it. I'll be frank with you guys at the beginning of this. I really hate this little thing right here. Every time someone pledges, this gets reset. It keeps the train going. Backerkit, you got to come up with something else. Now, with all the other Gloomhaven, Frosthaven previous campaigns, why are you getting this? You're going to get a discount MSRP. You're going to get a discount period from the cash side of things. That is the one consistent thing I have seen with all of their games on crowdfunding. So if you want the cheapest price, guaranteed this is going to be there. That's what you're getting. I love the $2 million funding goal. I'll be frank. Again, I was very surprised by that. They're going to hit it probably by the time you guys are watching this, which is relatively amazing. An average pledge level, though, right now, for the number of backers, for the money raised, is just over $240. So if you thought pledge levels, cash was going to go down on crowdfunding, you're wrong. Bubble bursting, golden bubble bursting, not at all. Now, what is this bringing to us? Gloomhaven 2nd Edition, Frosthaven reprints, Gloomhaven the RPG, that's where I'm going to have an issue, and miniatures. Interesting split, though, of who is getting what. And if you want to spend $600 on this, you can. Pricing, though, is what they start with at the top. Deluxe RPG is going to cost you $100. $100. Okay, that's a lot of RPG stuff right there. 2nd edition, Gloomhaven, $130. Miniatures base game only, also $130. So you can get a ton of miniatures. No one's going to argue about the miniature value. I will argue about the detail on them down below, which sort of leaves a little bit to be desired, obviously, but I'm hoping that they're going to be better in person than they are with the renders down here. Frosthaven, though, this is the massive increase. Frosthaven up to $180. That's not an insane markup, but it's still a freaking metric ton if you think that it's actually cheaper here than what it might be going forward, like I said at the beginning. Full set of miniatures for all of the games. Again, 600 miniatures. $325. People who are looking at this from a 40K or from a Warhammer or from anything else, D&D, they're like, oh, that's a good price for miniatures. Well, not if you're a board gamer. That's a lot of extra when I already have standees that do the job. Team standee, right? Ultimate Gloomhaven set, though, $350. Gets you 2nd edition, the miniature base set, and the deluxe RPG. Now, the thing I have the issue with is the RPG, because they kind of make it out to be the RPG basically as Gloomhaven. It's Gloomhaven almost rolled into an RPG rather than something uniquely, separately different. No, like I want an RPG if I'm RPGing, right? And if I want an RPG, the thing is, typically I don't want to be doing board game. I want to be doing RPG completely separately. Part of the role-playing aspect of things is getting away from the deterministic combat. It's getting into the die rolling. It's getting into the crazy chaosness. And I don't think this necessarily gives you that. When I think of Gloomhaven, I think of the opposite, right? You think of playing the cards and having the most mitigation, the most strategy, the most ability to deal with what's in front of you, not a random dice chucker. And so those two things don't line up in my head from that aspect of things. Now they run you through what the differences are from Gloomhaven here, and then they run you through the add-ons here. You get some solo scenarios, the reusables, the upgrade packs, the organizers, all of those other things. Then they run through the RPG stuff here again. I don't have enough time to play the board games. RPGs, each RPG, because you have RPG collectors just like you have board game collectors, RPGs arguably are longer commitment and a longer time frame than board games, and I can't look at those and say get more board games, and I have a harder time saying get more RPGs. Then they run you through a little bit of what's going to be different and how you're going to create your character and how it's different and the role play attributes, blah, 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 blah. You get to see some of the miniatures down here that I was talking about as you get past the RPG stuff. And this is where you start to see some of the bigger stuff, the miniatures, the bases, how they line up to the actual standees and the colorations. Now, again, I prefer something color as opposed to gray blobs sitting on my table. Start to get to see some of these miniatures, though, and I'm not a huge fan of small miniatures in these cases. Small miniatures at mass market. Like, I did not like them with Destinies. I did not like them with some of the other smaller games where you're getting these 28mm ones. They're just too small, with lacking some of the detail sometimes at these really small levels that some of the board games have shoehorned in. Destinies would have been great with standees. Would have been better with standees. And I don't think this is going to make any more of a difference. I think it's really that you're going to be getting this because you want them on the RPG, not because you necessarily want them in Gloomhaven. Because no one in the history of Gloomhaven was ever like, you know what, Chris, I don't think I have enough setup and tear down with Gloomhaven. Let's add some more miniatures, right? And organize those on top of everything else. So take that for what you will. That's my 2 cents. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be funded by the time you guys watch this. You get all the way down to the bottom here, and they go through all the timeline and the shipping, and shipping's going to be fine. It's not a big deal. Taxes with the VAT, all that stuff. Now, this is the interesting standpoint, is you're going to have it already, wave 4 of things, in January 2025. Whew. Miniatures of Gloomhaven begins fulfillment here. 2025, folks. You are putting over a year and a half out. And so, not that I worry about them delivering, but this is the other thing that peeves me on a lot of crowdfunding pages. Why are you going now so early in the process, right? Why does this all have to be under one big banner? I don't understand that component. And I'm sure, again, marketing, getting the money up front, but it's not like Gloomhaven and Jaws of the Lion hasn't gotten already the retail traction to be able to support this. It's free money on, crowdfunding. So I can't blame them for doing it, but I also can't give them a pass just because they're Gloomhaven, right? So there you go. Everything you need to know on that. Let me know what you think. Side note here, as I give a little bit of a repeat update on Gloomhaven, at the time of me filming this again, it's already at 1.6 million. What the other thing that was brought to my attention is actually that Frosthaven, within all of this huge, massive conglomerate of a page, they're actually offering one of these add-ons as a map book for Frosthaven, a la Jaws of the Lion. And I was not paying close enough attention, but that's essentially what they've got going on here. So if you're looking for that, $50 might not be a bad thing for that, because that's the biggest issue with all those tiles. Now, I wish it would have been with the game the first time around. So I'm a little peeved at that you're already seeing basically an upgraded version of it. But take that for what you will, especially if you're not already into Frosthaven. This might be or behoove you to get in that sense. So there you go. Next up, you can already see I'm backing it. Waypoints. This is your price per play game. This is the sleeper hit of the week. This is the game you should be backing. Tell them Liege sent you if you are backing. $12,000 already, almost. Very short campaign, $5 print and play at home. One page, you color it out, you print it off in color, you laminate a couple copies, you're good to go for the rest of your life. That's what you do with Waypoints here. The previous makers of Voyages and Aquamarine haven't let me down yet. Backer of the previous two. Gonna shout this one to the rooftops from that side of things. Two of the best print and plays, roll and writes that have been out there in the last 2 or 3 or 4 years. So this is what you're getting. How you play this, though, as I mentioned last week, you're rolling dice that's going to advance to give you different weather conditions that are going to affect how you can then move across the contoured intervals. You're going to be finding waypoints, finding animals, hiking to multiple campsites over 4 separate days in order to score the most victory points. And if this is anything like the previous ones, you're probably going to get a couple extra maps. Here's a solo one. Here's map 2. And if Postmark does anything like the previous 2, like I mentioned, you may end up with 3 or 4 easily post-campaign. Or you may have people that love this game so much, like Voyages, that people put out their own on the Discord for everyone that Postmark Games supports. So, yeah. Oh, and yeah, you get all new maps for Season 1 as you make them, like I mentioned. So, why aren't you getting this? Why aren't you getting this? If you don't have Voyages, go get it. It's like a cheaper, more accessible version of Guild of Merchant Explorers from AEG, and it was out before them. So, there's Aquamarine too. Boom. Go get them. Why are you sitting here watching me? Tell them Liege sent you and go back it right now, because support indie publishing. Speaking of indie publishing, Etariya. I only have one of these two. My review came out earlier this week of the abstract Etariya and the Septachroma game. The other one is a worker placement, resource management, set collection style of game, and I'm really in love with the abstract one, to be frank with you. If you're an abstract lover, you should be checking out this abstract game. I don't have hands-on with the Elven Relics, but that's the one that gets featured at the top. I'm going to make an argument that, you know, Septachroma is probably the best abstract I've played this year. Here's Elvian. I thought it was Elvin. Elvian Relics there. Hand management, worker placement, dice control. So essentially what you're doing is you're having these cards that are going to be part of the win conditions, part of the objectives, but also going to be sparse in terms of scoring in the first place. And so you're going to be using your workers to travel across this map in a unique discovery system. If we go to the rulebook here, this game is played over 4 rounds. You get 3 turns each round. You actually roll dice at the beginning of the game, 4 of your dice, and then you never roll them again. It goes through the 3 phases of each of your turns here, starting with the action phase. You know, it's relatively straightforward. Draw, reveal, and then explore as the second part here. There's a lot of fluff in terms of this. Don't be fooled by the 32-page rulebook here. It's a little bit shorter than it actually may seem, and it runs you through a little bit of the locations that you're going to be visiting or being able to go to, and then it also shows you how you're going to be moving across these goal markers, and you must pass through each card that is going to be available to you along the travel path. The tricky part there is you actually get to apply each of the effects as you go along. So then when you're scoring it, all of the cards that are stashed next to your hint card are going to be able to be scored. And so this game really looks a little bit clever. What's the price point though? This is my first time actually looking at this page detailed down here. Now it runs you through a better synopsis right here if you want to see what's actually on the page with a few GIFs. And then we get down to the second game, which is the one that I prefer, which is the one I love as an abstract game, right? 7 colors, 7 pieces of each color. You get black or white. You get a modular board that's completely changeable on each setup because of the transparency of these black and white pieces you're setting down. And then you either draw chips from a bag 3 at a time, or you have a draft variant in 2 or 3 different ways to mitigate how much chaos or randomness you want. And you have to get the majority of a majority color on your black or white on the board, but you can place them on either board. I'll throw my link above, and it's just cool. So yeah, everything that I said there, it's a great abstract. I really like it. I forgot, or maybe I wasn't even told exactly the launch date of this. It's probably more on me than anything else. So my video should have been out prior to launch, to be frank with you guys. I just mea culpa there. So Modias though, support them. They got a few stretch goals here. They've got some more reviewers coming. Hopefully, I need to get myself on this page. It's okay. I don't care if I'm on the page or not. But either way, it's a great game. I really like it. So I don't say that, but you know I like my abstracts and I'm picky about them. So I give this a thumbs up on the abstract side of things as a whole. So check it out, Etariya from Modias. Next up, we have Eldfall Chronicles of Northern Wind, and this one is already exceeding expectations. I did not expect it to get this much, especially within the first couple days, because if you go back to the original Eldfall Chronicles, there's really nothing on Board Game Geek in terms of reviews, in terms of comments, in terms of just any sort of opinion on it, hardly. And it got 70,000 euros the first time around with nearly 600 backers. But we're already at that number of backers, and we're already well over that funding, which again speaks to the price point of pledges overall, and we'll get down to that in a second. But this is sort of a mix, an amalgam of PvP, co-op, skirmish style games, and this is a standalone but also able to be completely integrated with the previous edition. And they say it's a dungeon crawl, but really what I heard people talking about is more of a skirmish style game. And again, this one is a very heavy rulebook. I mean, the rulebook is something like 50 pages for a skirmish style game. And some of you skirmish people are at like 40K are gonna be like, 50 pages. I read that every single night. And I'm great for you, but that's a big barrier to entry for non-skirmish war game type people in that sense. And so that's the only thing I would have hesitations of, right? Like also solo co-op, PvP, PvE. There aren't many games that do all of those really good. But if you're also going to put things up there, you kind of got to be a little knowledgeable about it too, right? 9.5 on Board Game Geek. That's amazing, Chris. There's 27 ratings. So let's be clear. 27 ratings is 27 ratings, folks. That's why I'm talking about that. I mean, there were almost 600 people backing this first time around, and I was told this earlier in the month about the online community being highly interactive and highly supportive and really liking it. I don't know, but 600 people is not a huge community, folks. And 27 people on the Board Game Geek, because usually there's a big Venn diagram of people that overlap on these skirmish style games and this style, but this one is less and less. So early bird miniatures, I mean, it's heavy miniature, folks. And that's what you're going to be paying for here, because look at this average price of this secondary pledge that has the expansions here. It's almost 200 euros. 200 euros. That's why it's so massive. You know, that's a ton of money. Speaking of the Gloomhaven thing, you know, at least with Gloomhaven, $130 gets you what, like 300 miniatures? This is like, I don't know, 30? Just kidding. It's not apples to apples. I know it's apples to oranges, but the all-in pledge from both campaigns is over $500. That's insane. How many people we got doing this, by the way? I'm curious what the pledge levels people are at right now. 72-hour early bird. Okay, so 289 at that. Retailer edition, great. The all-in, 0. All-in early bird here, 80. So that's still 80 people doing that. They run you through the expansions here. What is the difference? How different are they? You can mix and match. I have no idea. Probably too big of a rule book for me to be interested in. I love the theme. I love the artwork. I love the idea of a game like this. But with that big a rule book and so much competition to hit the table, this is definitely a try before you buy thing for me, especially with the combination of the price point right now. It may be amazing. It may be awesome, but for me, it's about also what hits the table. And this would have a lot harder time hitting the table. Would I try it if somebody brought it? Abso-freaking-lutely, especially if they teach it to me. If I traded for a copy, yeah, I'd be all over this. Am I going to probably buy and spend this much money right now? That's where I can't commit, right? And look at this. This is a lot of stuff. And they finally go over the gameplay content down here. They give you a little bit of the progression of the quests that you can do as a PvE style of things, and as well as the campaign. And this is where you can see a little bit of the dungeon crawl, but it is a dice chucker as well. And you have about like 7 different attributes that you're going to be continually managing or monitoring and affecting depending on what is going to be doing. There's reach, there's melee, there's ranged, all that you would expect. Now I wonder if you have this big of corridor or combat area, how much tactical strategy can you have, right? Like, it's a corridor, you can't really get by them. It's, you know, head to head and slug it out. So I'm assuming there's more. They have a whole system of AI behavior cards that goes along with that. You have your upgrades, your experience, that is all very intuitive. Again, I love the style of it. I think it looks very intriguing. The event cards are basically your dead of winter. Something bad or good is going to happen every round. 100 hours of gameplay content, skirmish resources if you just want to do that. That'd be my big thing too, right? Like I said above, skirmish and cooperative, you know, those don't always work out the best. So we'll see where it goes. I'd love to see where this one is at a year or two from now and what people think of it. So yeah, take it for what it is. Check it out if you're interested. Again, it's already exceeding expectations, and I give them a lot of kudos for putting out a product that people are willing to support. So we'll see where it goes. Eldfall Chronicles, Northern Winds. Now we have Scarface 1920, almost $500,000, but that's actually kind of underachieving compared to the first one right now. But we'll see kind of where this one ends up in 3 weeks, because it's a longer campaign. Redzen Games is giving us not only one expansion, but a little bit of extra gangs to go along with this expansion on the bloody business side of things. And the interesting aspect of this is that they say right here at the very top, they say flat out, never going to go to retail. Quote unquote, asterisks right there, retail, retail, retail. Doesn't say that it's not going to be sold off elsewhere, but it's not going to go to wide distribution or retail. Sort of like a mythic wording right there. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe they're going to sell web shop. Maybe they're going to do web store. Maybe they're going to do something else different than that. But again, I just, you know, wording, semantics, it really kind of does make a difference. They run you through at what's going to be in this box as well. A new expansion board, some new bosses, some new good guys. Well, they're really the bad guys. Just a little bit of everything else that's going to be an additional supplement, essentially. A few new mechanics that are going to go along with it as well. I am not familiar with this game as a whole. It's an area control style worker placement miniature based game. And so it's going to probably fall outside my comfort zone of wanting to pick up at this point. And the other interesting aspect of this is a vast majority right now of the backers. Let's see how many backers we have. 3,100. Almost 2,200 of the 3,200 backers are at just the expansion level. So as much as this was widely acclaimed, there's only about 700 people getting the all-in as well as the other high pledge level. So that's really what you're starting to see when you get down here. Now, if you go over to the rule book and the how to play, they give you a nice synopsis here and the basic concepts of all the different areas you're going to be dealing with on the board, the dealers, the jobs, the police, the neighborhoods, how you're going to be storing your drugs and your resources, and the time track that you're going to be taking care of as well. So they run you through how you're going to be playing your cards, laying out your turn, and then how, again, with sort of a worker placement style vibe, you're going to have to reorganize and bring them all back in to be able to do more stuff later on. So yeah, you're getting some stretch goals here. There's a little bit of exclusivity when they run you down through this expansion, because again, it says game found exclusive. What does that actually mean? Like I mentioned, right? It says no retail. Well, no retail doesn't mean it's not going to be available at some way, shape, or form later. It just means specifically right now that's not in the plans. So again, you can see one expansion, the gangs. This is all the new stuff though. And this is $100 worth of new stuff right here. And you have the majority of people doing it right there. So that's massive. Reprint, relatively a lower amount overall. And then we get down to the everything pledge essentially here. And that's got the other 700 majority of backers. Here's a little bit more of the exclusive and all the add-ons separately if you want them. So it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for this game. Again, this better be one that you love. So actually, they actually give a further explanation down here. I didn't actually see this before that little rant up there. But they say, you know what? We made the base game available at retail, but we're just going to not stretch ourselves too thin, and we're going to basically sell it at game conventions or through our web store, like I said. So again, it's sort of a Mythic thing. And I don't fault people for doing that. It's sort of like clickbait, right? On YouTube thumbnails. I don't know anything about that, though. And it's kind of like that. It's just the wording of how things, you know, get interpreted and how you want to interpret them. I don't blame them one bit whatsoever. We're seeing a lot more companies go the web store individual route rather than opposed to the wide retail distribution. And I understand it. Cutting out some of the middlemen, a little bit better profit margin as well. Expansions though. Expansions, price creep. Expansions, price creep. That's where better money is made than base games. It's true. You may not like it, but also, do you love it enough to get more of it? That's always the question. Are you going to play more of it? Is really, can you incorporate? That's the question. Incorporation. Next up, HackClad. Japanime. I never get any notice of Japanime. Japanime like really launches stuff like, surprise, we're Japanime. And this is another import game, sci-fi anime based from Japan. It's got this weird combination of deck building and sort of skirmish going on. Speaking of skirmish. And it's really interesting because you're going to be basically drafting a character and building up their deck and going on this grid to battle each other in a semi-cooperative way while also taking out enemies and wanting to be the one with the most victory points at the end with your asymmetric, unique witch that you're fighting with. And that's kind of the gist of the game as a whole, right? It's expensive. The one thing I'll say is as a previous backer of probably 2, maybe 3 Japanime games, I cannot say what I said about Gloomhaven. I think I have seen it for cheaper every single time post-campaign Japanime. Unfortunately, none of the Japanime games that I have bought have held up to the test of time in terms of overall my opinion of them, but also overall just value in that sense. Again, not that I buy things for value, but at some point, you know, but as a consumer, you know, I also got to look out for me as well. And if it's going to be cheaper later and there's no difference with the 3 I think that I've backed now, yeah. Again, love the art. Huge anime fan. Looks exciting. But arena battling, deck building, it looks more like a 3D Twisted Fables with a little bit more complexity and a little bit more going on in terms of the actual map control rather than just the BattleCon back and forth that Twisted Fables has. I think it's interesting. I just can't tell. This rulebook is too big for you just to skim even. You have to download it. It's like 260 megabytes. It's only like a 16-page rulebook or so it's not nearly as long as some of the other ones this week, so you can get a decent sense. The thing I wish, though, when you're getting down here, again, $49 for the base game, another $30 for the expansion, getting all the acrylic standees that go along with it and sleeves is going to cost you way too much. Merchant here, 2 base games, great. A few stretch goals for minis that are going to be included with it if they hit them. Again, the acrylic standees. The thing I wish, because the rule book is okay, I don't get a good sense of the game flow. And there's no videos on here to actually show you any bit of gameplay. And that's probably the biggest issue. And without the gameplay flow, I'd be a little reluctant because, again, I could see this going either way in terms of the uniqueness and the combination. And I am a sucker for this sort of thing. But with my failed history with one of their small box games, Mirrorless, as well as Testament and Tokyo Sidekick, I just can't get it on crowdfunding right now. This is a wait and see for me from that aspect. So there you go, HackClad. Next up, Dog Park New Tricks expansion. $80,000. Only the second game from this company, Birdwood Games. And this is getting you not only the potential for the base game, the other expansion that came previously that was an exclusive. I think there's a third expansion as well as now the new one. And there's a bundle, there's a collector's edition, and then there's just the new stuff as well, and you can sort of a la mode it if you will. It also gives you up to 5 players that can play with it now. The new things, multi-breed props, trick training, and enough room, like I said, for 5 players. The big issue, and it's really exemplified on this page, is nowhere on this page does it tell you how to play the game. It has more videos and more pictures and more, you know, how much stuff costs, especially in the first half of the page, but none of the actual essential information. If you were not familiar with this game, look at this. You have to scroll all the way down here, scrolling, still don't know how to play, Here's the rulebook for just the new one. Again, doesn't tell you how to play it, doesn't tell you how to play the game or why you'd want to be interested in this game. No mechanics, nothing of what you're going to be doing until you get down here. And even then, these are running through the expansions. Finally, you get down to how to play, but it's a video. So no actual, what does this game do? How does this game play? It's just a bunch of videos on the page. Again, lots of reviews of the original and tons of previews up here. Again, nothing wrong with previews, but preview. Now, the issue is that it's a little bit more expensive at retail. I actually went over to Board Game Oracle because I don't remember seeing this one widely available on the secondary market. And it was available anywhere on Board Game Oracle from $41 to $60. Most of the sub $50 ones are sold though. So if you're looking at it from just that standpoint and you're looking for not the new expansions, everything Dog Park here is going to run you about 96. And considering the expansions here are about 40, I mean, that's about a wash. That's a wash on crowdfunding from a price point. So, and you're going to get a little bit of an upgrade. So if you really want it, yeah, you're probably better off getting a little bit of the upgrades if you really like them. If you don't, well, it might be hit or miss at retail as well from that standpoint. So how much of the expansions do you need, though, is really the question in a game like this. How much layering or depth in a 60-minute game are you wanting? Because this is going to add a new board. It's going to add more unique dogs that you're drafting. Because essentially what you're doing on your turn-by-turn basis, you are trying to draft via bids of victory points which dogs you want. Then you subsequently take said dogs, you choose one of them to walk around the park, hitting various locales, hitting various bonuses, scoring objectives, and you do that to get the most points at the end. And again, it gives you a little bit of overview here of what these 3 things are that they're adding. The multi-breed dogs, the trick training, and the super locations. So trainer, okay, combination of abilities, multi-breeds, more abilities, and super locations. So more things that you're scoring as you go around walking with the walkers. So it's got a little bit more of an overview for the expansion, but unfortunately, if you're not familiar with the base game, you're really going to have to watch a video, or you're going to have to head over here to Board Game Geek and check it out there instead. So again, I'd love to see more on the page, but clearly people like it, and it hasn't been widely available, and they want a little bit of a collector's edition. For a filler game, though, that's what I worry about, though, is almost $100 for a 60-minute or under game. That's an expensive price point. That's price creep that I talked about last week as well. People like it, though, so it's doing well from a funding standpoint. I mean, it's killing it. Let's be frank. This is going to reach $100,000 easily, and so people really must like this. To show my biases, again, I have no interest in a dog-themed game. Would I play it? Absolutely. Would I try and trade for it? Maybe. But there's also just themes that you just kind of look at and go, that's not for me. And this one, not for me. I'm okay with that. But if you are, go for it. Again, tell them Liege sent you. So what else we got going on? We got Nestlings here, almost funded. It's about 80% funded at the time of me filming this. Shem Phillips, you may know him from obviously Garfield Games, did the solo mode on this game. This is a dice worker placement game with a unique little twist that we've seen a few other places. It reminds me very much of Dice Manor in the way that this is going to operate, because essentially what you do is you have different resources in different biomes, and you're going to be trying to build your nest and feed your younglings, but not those younglings. But if you are placing your dice in those areas that match the corresponding symbol, the more you have in the area gives you priority. Because normally it's just the order in which you place them into the biome is going to give you priority to get the matching resources from that area. What happens is every round, there's going to be a certain number of resources, 1 plus the number of players, for example, in each biome. So there's going to be resources available, but what order you get them in, how you take them is going to be depending on the priority, which again is depending on who places where, when, as well as who has more in each area. And then you just go through, you gather all those resources up, you spend them, and then you use them for either the victory points immediately or for comboing and chaining and sort of engine building later on. That's the game in a nutshell. Now, the interesting thing here also on top of that is they have a little biome section. So when you go to different biomes, you're filling up your little wheel here, which is going to give you more bonus points and more activation if you can fill all of a section. Then you get to see what the deluxeifications are with some of these resources, as well as the super deluxeified version here for $80. And that's a ton. I'm sorry, that's probably too much for a 30 to 60 minute game, right? Speaking of price creep, again, I had no problem with an insert, but how many of us use the insert and how many of us just throw stuff in there and make it work no matter what? So inserts are becoming less and less appealing, I think, overall, but I mean, seems like a solid game. I'm a little surprised it's not funded at this point, but I think also this is a situation with Tangerine and Lucky Duck putting this one out that you've got probably closer to a true funding goal for an indie style game here at $36,000. So take that for what you will, but seems solid. There you go. Next, we'll go over Ovation, musical game. This is literally just funded at the time of me filming this 40 to 60 minute game where it's got a little bit of a worker placement vibe with space base, if you will, because essentially what you're doing is you're taking one of these 4 actions and you're placing your worker at the top of your board in that section. But as you're gathering cards from this central market, depending on which action you choose, you're actually slotting them under some of your other actions in order to chain them and combo them, not only with the action that they're going to be involved with, but also the other actions. The other interesting dynamic here that you'll see mentioned on several of the quotes as we scroll down is that there is a system that allows you to go and listen to other people's performances as you're performing a concert as one of your actions, and they get inspiration, which is one of the main resources in the game subsequently then that they can use. And so there's a little bit of interaction there. Obviously there's going to be a risk benefit if you're going to go listen to someone else's as opposed to them listening to yours. And even Jared here has a quote, so you know it must be a pretty decent game if he's putting out a Kickstarter opinion. I don't see him do that a lot, and he and I have chatted on Twitter about that, and so take that for what you will, but I look at that as a relatively solid sign if he's putting his word out there. So there you go. Rulebook is there. Ovation, 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 all of the cards that you're going to see. Let's see, what's the price point here? What's the price point? Oh, yeah, that's right. That's what he told me. This is a New Zealand project, so that's where he's based out of. So got to support local. And I think he does the same thing with Shem, too, with the upcoming Redux version of Raiders of the South Sea? No, Raiders of the... whatever it is. You know what I'm talking about. Raiders Redux. I mean, yeah, the price point here is $47. That's slightly more than I would have expected on a game like this, to be frank. But... there you go. Plenty of stuff to look at, and it seems, again, very solid, very reminiscent of a solid, short, under an hour filler game like Nestlings. So those two back to back for that reason. Next up, Welcome to Wrecking. This is a solo 54 card game, which is about 80% funded as well at the time of me filming this. Small package, 20 to 30 minutes. Gives me a little bit of vibes of Resist, but in a slightly different way, because essentially what you're doing is you have 4 locations that you're going to be laying out, and then you have 5 event cards that you're going to be trying to go through every turn. And so you're going to place your character under the far left one, and then you're going to have to go through the sequence of events or actions that's listed on each of these cards, positive, negative, or otherwise. But you're also going to have to mitigate based on the actions that are available to you to help fix, help resolve that card in the first place. And if you lose health, well, you can only lose that so many times before you lose. There's 3 ways to lose. There's only 1 way to win of getting through the whole deck. And so that's just what you have to deal with. You're protecting these towns as part of the defending mission because they can get started on fire. There's evil tentacles that are going to be taking them over. You're going to have to use this nefarious dust in order to win or to deal with the events that are going on in the first place. So the only thing I'll say is you have to go over and click the print and play that they give as a free to get the rules. And that's the only way that you're going to get it. It's not really on the page directly. But that's it in a nutshell. I remember covering Harsh Shadows in their solo game from about 2 years ago. So decent pedigree there. I have no clue how Harsh Shadows has been received previously. So check it out if you're interested. But again, another strictly solo game for all you solo junkies. Next up, Escape from Project Riese. Now this is again a sequel from another previous game designer where they did a very similar World War II-esque versus zombies vibe. So what you've got going on here essentially as a follow-up to their previous project Stalingrad Z is a zombie-based World War II game like I mentioned. And essentially what you're doing is you're using D12s to go across this map, this terrain, this skirmish style board to avoid the zombies to complete the objectives. And they give you a nice intro scenario guide of about 5 linked scenarios that subsequently in all of these scenarios, for a total of 40 of them, are going to have carrying over ramifications, consequences, and reactions based on what you achieve, accomplish, or have happen on the previous ones. And they give you both a miniature version as well as a standee version. They run it through here, the pledge levels, print and play, the standee travel set version for 35, the miniature version for 59, 154, the deluxe version of everything else, everything all in right there. And what's really interesting here to me is actually when they go and they talk about the previous campaign down here a little bit, they talk about the fact that they raised $200,000 on the first campaign and $150,000 in the pledge manager afterwards. That's insane to me, right? And shipping is whatever. Shipping is going to be fine. 15, 20 bucks, whatever it's going to be. But that's a lot of money for the previous one. And if you had asked me off the top of my head, how much did it raise? I would have guessed around this much. So if it really raised $200,000, again, the question is, why is this one only going for $45,000? But you can buy both of them. You can get one of them, whatever you're so choosing. Again, mechanically, it's slightly different, but it's more of a roll, action, move, selection style of game with a zombie side type feel, but at a lower price and a lower cost. So there you go. Project Riese. Next up, this is a really interesting one. I had this one on my radar, but I didn't know it was coming to crowdfunding, and I didn't definitely know it was coming this week. But this is the Glade from the designer of the Key games, Richard Breeze. And this is a tile laying game of a slightly different variety. Essentially what you've got going on is you've got your own forest board and you've got a central glade board. And you're going to be playing these wooden tiles that have 3 aspects on them. They have a leaf variety, a fruit variety, and an animal variety all on them. And they're all going to be unique. And you're going to have a bunch of them. And then you're going to have these toadstool counters. So essentially what happens is you're going to be playing of sets of anywhere from 1 to 4 on your own individual board right here, actually, not this one, the big one right here underneath it. And so what's going to happen then is as you play one on your board, they run you through the deluxeifications because there's a collector's edition and there's a retail edition, but you play them on your individual board here in the set, sort of like a Scrabble-like manner, they say. Well, now the tricky part is there's going to be a 4th one, potentially, that is going to give you a common characteristic. Like the example they use here is this one all has berries. Berry in the right, berry in the lower right, berry in the lower right. So there's a 4th tile that has this type of berry. And so what you do is you put a toadstool marker on the central board in the middle to mark it that that's the one that you need for that one. But if somebody else plays that tile, they get your marker, right? Most markers, most points. That's how you go. So it's a little bit weird in that sense, but it's kind of cool actually at the same time. It's going to be expensive though. It's going to be expensive. And then they say that the retail edition is actually going to be available by the end of the year. So this is really like a pre-order more than anything else. Because this part I skipped over at the top of the page here that talks about what they're doing here with the standard edition and the collector's edition right here says that it's going to be published in October or November already this year, depending on production and global shipping, which lines up again with what you see over here. So why get it now? Well, you've got a little bit of a rubber sorting mat there for some of the resources and the extra counters and how they line up with a little bit of an illustrated bag. So for the price differential, I mean, it's a $6 price difference, but do you think this tile laying game is going to be $52 at retail when it comes to retail, you know, in 5 to 6 months? With, again, shipping here, North America, Canada, it's going to be 20 pounds. US is going to be 16 pounds. Then you're almost looking at a $70+ game for a light tile filler. I mean, I think this game looks absolutely one that I would really like, but I don't think it's worth getting on crowdfunding right now unless you're one of those people that can't get them elsewhere or shipped to you normally, or the retail isn't available at a wide market. And you can also get the other Key games here in the Pledge Manager as well. So, I mean, I think this one actually is going to shoot up on my wish list right now, just based on what I see on this page, but it's going to be a retail support, probably not a crowdfunding support. But again, this is one that I knew nothing about prior to me like scrolling here last minute prior to filming and airing this. So there you go. Next up, I thought this was kind of cool. Stonehenge tabletop game dice set. I don't know. They just look cool. I have no idea what they mean or how they are going to interact or how they're actually going to work, but they just look kind of cool. So I just thought I'd throw this in here as a little superfluous extra. I also found this one, speaking of things just digging through Kickstarter, JumPico, and this is an abstract style, sort of almost Mancala-esque game. And what I mean by that is essentially what you have is you have these 4 different dice that each have a unique number on them, and we'll go down and you can kind of see them in the summary here. Blank 1, 2, and 3, which means that that is how many tile spaces they can move potentially, but also how many spaces they can jump over other pieces. And so 1 means they can move 1 space or jump over 1 piece, 2, 2, 3, 3. And so you have to get all of your pieces down to the other opposing end before your opponent, because you also have to avoid them in this case. So the 3 goes 1, 2, 3, 3 jumps. So, or empty space movements. So that's it. They lay it all out here, and specifically how you can move depending on the jumping or the sum of the 2 die result when you're rolling them. And so you're going to have a little bit of a different variety depending on how you play. So I think it's just a little clever abstract style game that I came across, and this designer out of Japan has 24 other created projects on crowdfunding. So kind of cool. And if you're interested, give it a look-see. Ceramic. That's what she does a lot of, it says. So ceramic versions, and it's going to be more expensive because it's ceramic, but there you go. You want backgammon too? That's what it is. More Mancala backgammon. That's the word I was thinking for earlier. Really reminds me of a different version like of backgammon. So anyway, just thought I'd highlight it. You only hear about it here on Liege, right? Tell them Liege sent you. So there you go. Roundup this week. A little bit of everything in between. The Glades there actually looks like probably one of the most interesting games to me in the last week or two. But again, why get it on crowdfunding versus retail? I'm happy to support you at retail, publishers. Doesn't always have to be on crowdfunding. Other than that, waypoints. Hook, line, and sinker, as you saw there. I'm back in it already. So what else we got going on? Well, we have a couple big games, box-wise specifically even, coming this upcoming week. My best of 2023 so far will also be coming out hopefully in the next week or so towards the end of June as we get into already the second half of 2023, which is going to be crazy. I'm looking forward to it though. Got some stuff I need to play. Hopefully going to get some stuff played this weekend. Got organized. Trying to sell some stuff locally. Big purge. So we'll see how that goes. I got nothing else though. Got nothing else. We're doing the soccer. We're doing the soccer with the kid. We decided on it in case you were paying attention at all. Did the end rambles last week. And we'll see where it goes. We'll see how he does. It's gonna be interesting. You know? Hopefully he enjoys it. And if he doesn't, well, we just know how to do it again. And also check out from earlier this week my 5 and 5. Essentially 5 reviews, 5 minutes each. Total video was like under 25 minutes for all of them. A little bit of everything across the board. Dice heavy worker placement, 1-to-1 AI, 1-to-1 head-to-head battlers, and real-time battling in a ship. So a little bit of everything. So I'm going to do some more of those in the future. A little bit of dichotomous stuff, but also a little bit of comparison stuff too. So maybe some ranking of my 1 versus 1 games, a little bit of that sort of thing. Maybe a top 10 from that aspect. I got nothing else. I'm filming a secret project, collaborating for the first time next week as well too. So I'm excited and trepidatious about that all at the same time. It's going to be good. Spoilers. If you're on my Patreon, I'll tell you where it is this weekend. Or where it is, who it's with. So you can look out for it there and tell your friends. I got nothing else. Stay classy. Have a great freaking fantastic weekend.